Awesome. Um, so thank you everyone for joining us today for our amazing conversation with Joe Sisco as he explores with us the video note tool in the Brightspace learning instance. Joe Sisco is a sessional instructor at the University of Windsor, and we're super excited to share a little bit more about the Brightspace video note tool. During this webinar and session, please feel free to drop your questions, comments, or anything to continue the conversation into the chat feature or the Q&A, and we'll be sure to bring that to Joe towards the end of the session or as we go. So just as an agenda for today, we will start off with a quick round of introductions. This is one of our first few Convos with Community sessions, and we're super excited to connect with all of our Brightspace community members. Following that, I'll pass the stage over to Joe to talk a little bit more about what the video note tool is, what inspires him to use it, and where all does he use that awesome tool. Following that, we'll also see one core feature or workflow that Joe really thinks the video note feature helps with, and that's especially to provide meaningful feedback, to provide awesome engagement, and enhance the overall learning experience virtually. And then finally, we want to leave some time so that you can also hop on and continue the conversation by providing more questions through the chat feature. So I'm just going to quickly introduce myself. I'm Asim, and I'm a community specialist here at D2L. Super excited to meet all of you, and I'll let my colleagues introduce themselves.
Hi, everyone. I'm Julie Lau. I'm also a community specialist and just really excited to be highlighting Joe. And thank you for joining.
I am Steph Baldwin. I'm the team lead for the Brightspace community, and just so pleased and feeling so lucky that we have this opportunity to connect as a community in this event and to learn, Joe, from yourself and from the approach you've been taking to using Video Note for some very important purposes. And I think that is really what is grounding our discussion today, is the focus on feedback, the focus on connection with our students. So thank you so much for being a voice for that today.
And I'll introduce myself, Awesome, as well. My name is Joe Sisco. As you can see, I'm a sessional instructor at the University of Windsor. Very excited to be part of the presentation today in our webinar. I was a former high school math and science teacher, but now I have the opportunity to teach at the Faculty of Education at the University of Windsor. So my role at the University of Windsor is with teacher candidates. And so it's a very interesting connection because in Ontario, where we live, all teachers and students in Ontario have access to Brightspace, and it's a great learning tool in my classroom and then with the teacher candidates moving forward. I'll turn it back to you for a second, Awesome.
Awesome, perfect. Thank you so much. We just had one more colleague, and she's Andrea Blackwell, and she's also a delightful community member that you will see hop on in the community to answer a lot of your awesome questions that come through. So continue asking those questions, providing us that feedback. Joe, I'll turn over the screen share to you to carry forward the conversation.
Okay, thank you so much. And I don't really need to confirm, but I'm hoping that everyone can sort of see what we're seeing there in terms of my screen. And I'd like to start off first by just answering the question, what is the video note tool in Brightspace? So if you're new to Brightspace, possibly, or if you're new to the video note tool, it's a very powerful tool. It exists throughout the platform, I like to say, in the sense that it's available to you in many different places, as you can see on the right-hand side, available in content, discussions, grading, providing feedback to learners, and activity feed, and much more. So what does the video note tool allow you to do? It allows you to insert video recordings. And I'm going to say, I'd love to add a few words in there, absolutely seamlessly, to allow you to insert video recordings throughout Brightspace. And not only you as the instructor or the teacher, but also for your students and all of your learners. So the video note tool is available to everybody that's using Brightspace across the platform. And I think the best way to maybe start out by showing or talking about what it is to show you what it actually looks like in practice. So I'm going to pop over to a space that I belong to. So you can see I'm in the Brightspace learning environment. There's a course that I belong to at the top called the Demo for Champions. So we have a demo site for champions, Brightspace champions at the University of Windsor. And we use this to sort of showcase some of the great things you can do inside the learning space. So on the left-hand side, you're going to notice that I have an announcement posted. And I have my announcement. It's great. It's got lots of links. It's got some colors and so on. This is what students and learners are used to seeing and used to reading. Often we need something to catch their eye and what might engage them, as we say. And you can see there's a nice little video here. This is what Video Note actually looks like. So you can see as an instructor, I can create a really robust announcement, really detailed with links and so on, but I can also make it more personal and maybe even a little bit more inviting by adding what we call the video note. So what does it look like? The student pops in here. They can press play. Again, they're not downloading anything. They're simply playing it in line.
Hello, everyone. I thought I'd show you my mug that I'm using for
Not
today.
sure if you can hear that or if it's important that you do hear that. But a couple of items I'd like to point out to you here. You're speaking to the screen. You have up to 30 minutes of recording time. The captions are generated automatically. If you would like them to be there, you can have the captions appear in any language that you happen to be speaking in, which is awesome. And then what you can do is you can make this full screen if that's the case. And a student would like to say, I'd like to see that a little better and maybe rewatch that. So that's Video Note in a nutshell. It's a great tool that allows you to really make all of the learning happen in your learning space a little more personalized, more customized, and certainly, I would say, more inviting and more engaging. So I'm just going to pop back out of my environment for a second and pop back to the slideshow and dig a little bit deeper into maybe some of the places where we can use Video Note, and then talk about how we actually accomplish this. So as you can see on the slide, there are many different places you can use this. There are some different areas here where both instructors and students can use the Video Note tool. So you can see inside discussions, instructors can use the Video Note tool to increase engagement. But then what's really cool is students can add to their threads video notes to, again, maybe make it easier for them. For some students that don't feel like typing, they can just add a video note. I know one of the really fun things I do at the start of a semester is I'd like to have a discussion forum. It's sort of a cheating way that I use, a sneaky way that I use to get to know the students and their names. So I ask them to introduce themselves, say a little bit about themselves, and ask a question. And then I, the next day, can go into school and know what they look like, and I can actually use their names and, again, really make that a personalized learning experience. You can see this is available, again, throughout the platform. So whether you're using the announcements tool or activity feed as your main purpose, or your main tool for communication, you can see that there is, it's available to you in both announcements and activity feed. So we'll dig a little bit deeper, and please know that as we move forward, you will have access to these slides if you need any of this information. And Awesome and the community crew are very good at sharing once we're done our session today. So again, I would invite you again, as Awesome said earlier, if you do have any questions throughout the process here, please feel free to post them in the Q&A or in the chat, and we will make sure that we address those, or if not, we'll address them at the end if it's maybe not a timely question. Okay, so let's talk about adding Video Note to provide rich and meaningful feedback. And I do want to just preclude this before I actually go to the slide. Let's talk about what we mean by rich and meaningful feedback. Often when we're giving feedback as instructors or teachers, it's often typewritten. It's often maybe marking up a student's document in terms of, annotating a document and so on. The big piece here is that instructors and teachers alike, no matter what level we're at, the number one priority we have is we're taking time to providing rich and meaningful feedback. We want those students reading that feedback. How can we do that? We can accomplish that in a number of ways, and Video Note's going to make that feedback certainly more personalized and certainly more engaging as we move forward here. So I'm seeing a question in the chat, and again, Julie, Awesome, Stephanie, if you have any things that you would like to interject, please, by all means, I'll take a second to say, should we answer this question or can I move forward here?
We're doing perfect, Joe. We have a note in the chat just to let everyone know that we will be connecting these slides in the community corner event archive section along with the recording. So
beautiful.
Yep, all good so far.
Thank you. So I'm going to pop back into my course, everybody, and I'm actually going to go to my assignments area. So I'm in my assignments area in my Brightspace learning environment, and I'm going to navigate down to assignment number 5, where I have a submission or 2. And I'm going to provide feedback for the student, Joe Sisco student preview. And you may be aware, there's many features of Brightspace. I can click a number of different areas. I want to actually focus on this assignment 1A document, functions and relations. That is what the student submitted, and I would like to give that student some feedback. So very simply the way it works, and if you're new to the assignment tool, this is sort of standard in terms of assessment online or virtual assessment. You're seeing the document on the left. You have a number of annotation tools that you can use. Maybe that's a conversation for another day. But on the right-hand side is where the instructor is allowed to give feedback. And right now I'm going to ignore the grade, but I can enter a grade out of 100, whatever I choose after I've done sort of assessing and evaluating the student's work. I have provided some written feedback. You can see in the feedback area, as the instructor, you have the ability to use what we call the Brightspace editor, which is brilliant. This Brightspace editor allows you to add sort of multimedia pieces in there, if that makes sense. But one of the coolest pieces here, of course, is that you can provide, or you can add in what we call a video note. So how do we do that? Well, I'm in my overall feedback area here, and you can see I've already provided some written feedback. I'm just doing that for your purposes here today, but you can provide some written feedback. But then I'm going to put my cursor where I want it, and I would like to say, I'd like to add a video note. So how do I do that? I hover over this button here called Insert Stuff. It looks like a pause, play, rewind button. And yes, it's actually called Insert Stuff. And when I click on Insert Stuff, I have a number of choices here. I can choose any of the items here, but you'll notice in the middle there, I have the option to add a video note, or there's also something called a video note search. Video note search very simply is if I've already created a video note, I can reuse that video note for different students. And as a person who does assessment, you're quite aware that often you have sort of some canned responses you'd like to use. You can add as many video notes as you want, but if you say, I really had a great piece of feedback for student A, I'd like to give that great feedback to student B, I can just recycle that video note there. But let's add a video note right online. Let's see how this works. I'm going to cancel this and show you again how I got here. So I'm in my assignment, I'm in the feedback area, and I would like to provide my student with more than written feedback. So I hover over the Insert Stuff button, which is in the middle of my Brightspace editor. And when I choose that option, I can add what we call a video note. I'm going to try to add a video note here. I know sometimes when I'm doing in Zoom, often it doesn't work. I'm going to turn off my camera in Zoom just to make sure this sort of works. So when I add a video note, you can see what happens here. This interface comes up, and there I am. And I have up to 30 minutes of recording time. Probably wondering, do you have to use all 30 minutes? Certainly not. But you do have the luxury of doing that if you want to. Maybe that would be a situation where you might be giving, make some pre-planned feedback as opposed to just on the fly. But certainly you have up to 30 minutes, which is sort of awesome. You can also uncheck this box where you might want to say, I only want to do audio only. Again, very flexible. The tool is ever evolving and always getting better. So when I'm ready, and I've got my sort of script in my mind ready to go, I can just simply say, I'm going to do a new recording. So forgive me for 1 second, I'll do a new recording. So thank you for your submission, student. Wonderful job. You've met all the expectations, and I would then expand upon that. When I'm ready to go, I'm going to say, great. I'm going to stop the recording.
So
it's
thank
going
you
to
for
play
your
it for me again.
submission, student.
But I'm going to say,
Wonderful job. You've met all the expectations, and I would then expand upon that.
At that point, I would say, great. It sounds great. Next, I can now give it a title. I'm going to call this assignment number 5, and I'll call this student Sisco. And you can, you can provide titles and description as detailed as you want. I would give you as effective practice in my experience. You could never over describe things. Under describing is a problem sometimes if you feel like, I want to find that again. Giving that short description might be very helpful, but that's up to you. In terms of the audio language, just to be painfully clear here, the language that you're choosing, it does not translate for you. Rather, what it does is it chooses the language that you were speaking in. So if you were speaking in Canadian English, you would choose that, and it would automatically generate captions from that audio if that's what you wanted to do. And generally, that's the common practice that people do is they generate those captions. So it does allow that accessibility for all learners. There's feedback from our students in the field is they love to have the captions because often they're in a space where they might be listening to feedback on their phone and would love to be able to look at that and have those captions available to them without having to maybe bother the people around them. So when you say next, the video itself, because maybe it was a certain length of video, it might take us a second or so to render. But as you're doing that, you can say insert, knowing that that feedback is going to go right there, and you're ready to go. So that's the video note tool, basically how it works, and the workflow of actually inserting a video note into the feedback of an assignment. Again, which can be very, very powerful. I can only imagine how nice it is for students to receive that video feedback. I will share a comment with you that I've received from a student at the University of Windsor. One of the goals that I have as an instructor is I always like to give that feedback very timely once the students have submitted a project. So the project was submitted. I then gave feedback to the groups and so on. And I got a feedback from the student saying she was so impressed that I had taken the time to do that. I said, "Oh my God, look what Joe did." They call us, by our first names at the University of Windsor. She said, "Look what Joe did. They took the time to make this 3-minute video." And really, yes, there's some notes and so on, but it was really cool because as a teacher, I wasn't having to type. I'm a horrible typer, but I was not just sort of off the cuff, but I had some notes for myself. And then I was able to actually just say them to a screen. So, and then it came up, and there it is right there. My feedback is ready to go. I would then save that draft as a draft, or I would go on to the next student. If I'm comfortable, I could publish that, I suppose. I would like to point out something on the bottom right, which you might be wondering about. So on the bottom right, when you're giving feedback in the assignment tool, you will notice there is these buttons on the bottom called record audio and record video. They function pretty much the same way you just saw me add a video note just now. The only real difference is that they go in as attachments. So they don't really go in line with the text that you have inside of your, your feedback box there, inside the overall feedback box. This is totally a preference. This is totally up to you. Often I would say that if you're interested in having students download the feedback as a video, as an MP4, then you probably want to use the attachment option on the bottom, which might be more useful. And again, this is a preference. I know myself, I prefer to have it in line because it just looks more seamless and the students are more likely to read it. It seems like if students ever have to do anything like downloading a file or doing an extra step, that might present a little bit of a barrier. I'd like to show you, if there's no other questions right now, I would like to show you one other feature of how the video note can be used in the assignment tool, which is very effective as well. You may or may not know this, but when you're in the assignment tool and you have, like to make some edits on the fly, there is this 3 dots at the right, this ellipsis to the right, that allows you to go and actually do a couple of things. When I click there, I can edit the assignment. I can preview the assignment, or I can, concern myself with special access date. So let me preview the assignment to show you what the student actually sees. And this is another powerful use of the video note tool. When I provide instructions for my students for the assignment, I'm very much in the habit of providing the purpose of the assignment, some instructions, and then I'd like to speak to the assessment and how it will be assessed. But what's really powerful as well is giving that opportunity for me as an instructor to say, I'm going to make this assignment accessible for all the learners that are in front of me. Some students may have reading difficulties. Some students may have, other accessibility options or issues that I need to make sure that I cover in my class. So I have the instructions, the same ones that are detailed below here. They're also in the form of a video note. So now I've got all of my learners have access to that assignment, and they can use it and access that accordingly. Awesome. So again, I cannot, hopefully you're feeling my excitement for this tool of how useful it's been for me as an instructor to say, I now have the ability to provide a different mode of delivery for the feedback that I'm giving my students, along with the instructions that I'm giving my students for any assignments. So I'll pause there for a second, and if there are any questions, please feel free to post them in the Q&A or in the chat, and we can deal with them right now. But after that, I'll just move on and sort of wrap up a little bit here and talk about how we can use this to engage our students a little further, if so need be. Okay, so I'm going to pop back to my PowerPoint for a second, and I'm just going to sort of try to ask this question in a creative way, if I can here, by giving you a story. So the question we have is, how do I use video note to boost engagement in online classes? Okay, and whether it's a blended learning space or an online space, let's talk about how we can use that video note to boost that engagement there. So I'm going to share a wonderful story with you. I was working with an instructor at the University of Windsor, and this person was saying to me that they had given video feedback for an assignment they got back. And the instructor gave me the feedback that 2 pieces of feedback. Number one, she felt was very, very positive. She said the students loved it because One of the specific comments was, I got the feedback from my assignment in the same sort of mode that I got from my actual submission, which was a video file. So the student had submitted a video file, they received video feedback, and they said, oh, that's pretty cool. My instructor is trying to sort of align their work and align their feedback with the same mode that I've submitted the task. She also gave me another piece of feedback, which she felt was sort of negative. And she said, one of the negative pieces I would like to share with you is that students found that if they wanted to go back and revisit the feedback, they found that sometimes it was a little bit of a barrier. They couldn't always find exactly where they were in the video and blah, blah, blah. So it was interesting when I heard that piece of feedback, I actually talked to the instructor and I said, I hear that as very positive, actually. When you're telling me that students actually want to go back and read the feedback, that was powerful to me. Because again, as instructors, as users of Brightspace, you may be aware, in a digital learning space, you can see if students have read feedback. And one of the common laments that we receive as Brightspace champions is, I've done this work, I've given them feedback, and I go there and I see they haven't read the feedback yet. It doesn't say feedback read. And it's a little bit disappointing for the instructors. So for an instructor to say to me, my students are concerned that when they go back to read the feedback, and I thought, oh, wow, is that ever great? Students are reading the feedback. That's what we really, really want. So that to me is the powerful piece, in the sense that we are providing feedback in a way that makes sense to students, that maybe has become an expectation for students, that this is where we live. We live in a digital space. My instructors should be also embracing that digital space, and they are. And it's easy, and it's something that it's intuitive. As an instructor, I just go to my insert stuff, I insert my video, and it's there. And it's something that instructors are really, really embracing. I know as I work with the instructors at the University of Windsor, we often like to say, listen, I don't know where you are on your tech journey. If you're intimidated by technology, if you're new to technology, or maybe you're just an emerging user, let's pick some tools that are going to make your life easy and more efficient, but not be a heavy lift for you. Video Note is a very low lift. So often we say, if you're looking for tools with a low lift, try Video Note. It's going to make your course incredibly engaging, incredibly personal. They have the ability to make it personalized, but again, with a very, very low lift. So awesome. With that, I'm going to turn it back to you. I currently on the slide Q&A. I'm going to stop sharing and I'll turn it back to you, and maybe we can field any questions that we may have.
So thanks, Joe, for that wonderful walkthrough. I definitely have grown to appreciate Video Note a lot more as well. Before we dive into the Q&A, maybe we could just quickly chat a little bit about the resources that we had compiled for you. Julie, did you want to quickly hop on and share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, thanks, awesome. So we just wanted, obviously there's a real interest in Video Note. So just to ensure that you have access to additional resources following this connect, we just put together some other resources, some videos, as well as some additional Learning Center resources that we have all about Video Note and how it can be used to create those engaging spaces in Brightspace. So we will be hosting this slide that connects to all those wonderful resources will be hosted with this archived event. We keep all of our sort of Convos with Community events in an archived space that you can find in Community Corner when you're in the Brightspace community. So I can even pop a link to Community Corner just right here in the chat so that you'll be able to access the recording of this as well as these additional resources.
Also, just something for everyone to keep a lookout for. We have also partnered with Joe to build out a Learning Center resource. So stay tuned for an update on that as well. We will definitely be hosting those in the format of a resource and be promoting that through community. And again, we'd love to continue to partner with awesome customer spotlights like Joe, who have been using a Brightspace tool to transform the way their classroom is learning and boosting virtual engagement. So again, keep a lookout for that. But just as Joe, you were going across the presentation, I believe, Julie, you had a couple of questions that you would want to pose to Joe as well.
Yeah, definitely. So some of them you've already chatted about, just in terms of the accessibility, the accessible nature of Video Note. You chatted about how you can really just like with one click, enable those closed captions, which really gets at lots of different types of learners, as well as just sort of caters to like potential preferences, right? You were saying like when you're in a crowded space, you may want to access that feedback and be able to read it right there. I also wondered, you mentioned that you're not the best typer. So do you find that when you're creating these video notes for either explaining instructions for what the assignment is or providing that feedback, do you find that this saves you time for, preparing for your lessons as well as providing that feedback?
Thanks for the question, Julie. It's a great question because when you asked it, I was originally thinking of the teacher, but I also think of the student. I know at certain levels, students are putting themselves out there when they're putting a video out there, as are educators. And often what students have said to me is that I had to record that 3 or 4 times. And then because I did the captions, that didn't come out perfectly. So a couple of answers to that. Number one, I love that they're taking time to do that. I love that they're writing a little script. So you think of, inspiring sort of that nice communication piece and developing, solid communication protocols with our students, giving them this tool and giving them all the features of the closed captioning and auto closed captioning and so on really inspires them or empowers them to do their best work. So I love that they have the ability to say, hey, I posted this video note, I watched it again. Of course, they all watch their own stuff and they make sure that the captions are there. The other piece of that, though, which I think is pretty cool, which I didn't know until probably, part of the way into the video note journey there, was you as an instructor can actually go modify those captions. So, oh, I forgot to add the captions in there. You can re-add them after the fact if you need to, and you can modify them if they don't really meet your needs or purposes. So that's really cool. So in terms of saving time, Julie, absolutely it saves time. I know that when the person gave me that feedback, they said it was so impressed that you had given taken the time to give me that feedback. And I thought, well, it was better for me because it saved me so much time. Again, as a poor typer, it really allows me to just make some quick bullet points, but then allow me to just speak to that right there. And often as educators, we do have the ability, a little bit of the gift of gab, to just sort of just speak away freely, but having those bullet points and just some nice points allows us to do that. But again, cannot express how powerful it is in terms of, I'm not K-12 right now, but working with teacher candidates, I say to them, think how great this is for your early language learners or your English language learners that are struggling with your feedback. Maybe go home, have someone at home that can help them, that can maybe read the captions or just listen. If you know anything about language development, often the language or the listening comes first, and then the actual typing and the writing of it comes after the fact. So this is a wonderful tool to really empower those learners as well. And it really, I cannot express enough how important it is at the university level, where if it wasn't accessible, it's not being used, like, documents, images, and so on. At this level, the people that are pushing out these things in learning management systems are very diligent about making sure and ensuring things that are AOTA compliant. But hey, we feel like we've checked all those boxes there. So I feel so confident using this tool that I'm meeting those needs of those learners and really following the rules, I suppose. Thanks, Julie.
We've had a wonderful question up here in our Q&A component. This actually comes from a gentleman named Peter Wolf, and he says, great presentation, Joe, thank you. And this is again from Peter, who leads the video note team here at D2L. And he wants to know, in your opinion, what would be the main video note area for us to improve upon?
Interesting. It's funny. I think when I saw Julie, I believe you had the wrap-up slide with the links there. One of the links was creating a video note with just your webcam. And it's interesting, when I had my university students add a video note to introduce themselves, some of them used the video note tool and some of them actually added their webcam to do that. The only thing that I thought to myself is, I wonder why it wasn't really obvious to them how to add that video note in there. I wonder what the barrier was. And I will say I neglected to ask them about that, but that might be an interesting piece. Is maybe it's sort of buried in insert stuff. You know, I showed them this is how you get to it. Maybe there could be a button on the screen that says, hey, add a video, and that would still be in line. I know the video on the bottom does go in as the attachment. Again, I received very little feedback from students in terms of the negativity or any barriers involved. So that's about the only piece would be my wondering about why it wasn't really obvious to them to add a video note right in line with the text. I really had no other complaints. I'm very impressed. Thanks, Peter, for that question.
Awesome. I think, Joe, this presentation has definitely been very, very well received. And I think just like thinking about it, there's a lot to take away. Understandably, if there are more questions that would come up following this session, I'd like to keep the conversation and invite everyone to continue to post questions in the community as well, so that we can find ourselves connected to product experts there, as well as awesome community members like Joe Sisco, who can hop in, provide their own sort of tips and tricks and best practices to ensuring that we're facilitating the best learning for our learners. But yeah, thank you everyone for taking the time, and Joe, for you taking this awesome opportunity and lunchtime to spend with us and talk us through the Video Note Tool platform that you're using. But yeah, with that, I will pause the recording. Yeah, thanks.